Hello, everybody. We are working with Accelerator Solutions, working with you, and we were founded in 2000 to help organisations become market leaders through improved customer service. And we quickly learned that improved results come from positive experiences, and that means training staff to really connect with customers and build trust. And we also know that a strong service culture stems from effective leadership, so we give managers the skills and confidence they need to fulfill their critical role and deliver the service vision. So we also have an in-house research team that helps clients gain valuable insight from customers and staff and other stakeholders to drive changes that create a positive impact. You can see on the screen there that we have a number of our partners, our strategic partners, particularly the ILM, the Institute of Learning, Leadership and Management, and we're an approved centre of theirs. And we also deliver Lumia learning profiles for some of our clients too. Just so you're aware, my name is Angela, as you can see on the screen, and my colleague Nina. And just so you know, we won't be using your names when you share with us information in the chat, so that you feel more comfortable sharing your examples with us and within this session. All right.
Thanks, Ange. So this afternoon's session is called Keep Calm and Carry On. And so that you are all aware, today is National Stress Awareness Day, but also November is Men's Month. So a little bit about us. So my name's Nina. As Angela said, we work for Accelerator Solutions. I've been there for 7.5 years. My background's retail, travel and social housing, but I'm also a mental health first aid instructor. So I train people to become mental health first aiders. I have a lived experience of mental health with my dad, who had Alzheimer's, and my mum had vascular dementia, and professional experience from the years that I worked in social housing, as well as working as a mental health first aid instructor. So over to Ange.
Hello, I'm Angela. I've been with Accelerator for about 8 years, and I've been working in learning development for about 20 years in transport and logistics and warehousing and civil service and retail and all sorts of other organisations from my experience within Accelerator as well. So my experience with mental health awareness is purely lived experiences, similar to other people, around managing my own stress and becoming more aware of my own triggers and how to manage those. So what we're aiming for with this session is it's about thinking through these uncertain times and the fact that everybody's returning back to the workplace, and that can cause a certain amount of stress on both ourselves as employees and the business itself. And we're going to cover all 3 areas that we would in our normal 120-minute workshop in a slightly different way, though. So as I said, just to remind you, we won't be using your names when you share with us any information in the chat. You will receive a PDF copy of the slides afterwards. And what we're going to do is we're going to turn our cameras off now, so that you don't have us distracting you with our facial expressions and hand gestures, and you'll see us again at the end. All right.
So in the chat, if you wouldn't mind sharing with us all, when you see this quote, and it's from healthyplace.com, I'm not faking being sick, I'm actually faking being well. How many of you, and just a simple yes or no, how many of you have ever had moments where you felt like that on a work day, where you don't feel like you can go into work, but because you're not physically sick, you feel like you still have to go in, whether it's virtual or physical? So just in the chat, a yes or a no. So the reason we're asking this question, and thank you for those of you that are responding, is that this quote is a really good example of presenteeism. So presenteeism is when an employee who's ill turns up to work regardless of how they're actually feeling, whether it's physically unwell or mentally unwell. So this can actually cause productivity to drop and adversely affect workplace morale, health and safety. And a recent study carried out by the Mental Health Foundation and posted on LinkedIn showed that e-presenteeism has increased since the pandemic, with people working an additional 28 to 45 hours per month. So we are going to play you a video now. Some of you may have seen it before. It's called I Had a Black Dog, His Name is Depression. And the reason we're playing this video for you all is because we want you to get a sense of something that you may be going through, but also what people around you might be experiencing.
I had a black dog. His name was Depression. Whenever the black dog made an appearance, I felt empty and life just seemed to slow down. He could surprise me with a visit for no reason or occasion. The black dog made me look and feel older than my years. When the rest of the world seemed to be enjoying life, I could only see it through the black dog. Activities that usually brought me pleasure suddenly ceased to. He liked to ruin my appetite. He chewed up my memory and my ability to concentrate. Doing anything or going anywhere with the black dog required superhuman strength. At social occasions, he'd sniff out what confidence I had and chase it away. My biggest fear was being found out. I worried that people would judge me. Because of the shame and stigma of the black dog, I was out. So I invested vast amounts of energy into covering him up. Keeping up an emotional lie is exhausting. Black dog could make me think and say negative things. He could make me irritable and difficult to be around. He would take my love and bury my intimacy. He loved nothing more than competitive and negative thinking. He also liked to remind me how exhausted I was going to be the next day. Having a black dog in your life isn't so much about feeling a bit down, sad or blue. At its worst, it's about being devoid of feeling altogether. As I got older, the black dog got bigger and he started hanging around all the time. I'd chase him off with whatever I thought might send him running. But more often than not, he'd come out on top. Going down became easier than getting up again. So I became rather good at self-medication, which never really helped. Eventually, I felt totally isolated from everything and everyone. The black dog had finally succeeded in hijacking my life. When you lose all joy in life, you can begin to question what the point of it is. Thankfully, this was the time that I sought professional help. This was my first step towards recovery and a major turning point in my life. I learned that it doesn't matter who you are, the black dog affects millions and millions of people. It is an equal opportunity mongrel. I also learned that there was no silver bullet or magic pill. Medication can help some, and others might need a different approach altogether. I also learned that being emotionally genuine and authentic to those who are close to you can be an absolute game changer. Most importantly, I learnt not to be afraid of the black dog, and I taught him a few new tricks of my own. The more tired and stressed you are, the louder he barks, so it's important to learn how to quiet your mind. It's been clinically proven that regular exercise can be as effective for treating mild to moderate depression as antidepressants, so go for a walk or a run and leave the mutt behind. Keep a mood journal. Getting your thoughts on paper can be cathartic and often insightful. Also keep track of the things. The most important thing to remember is that no matter how bad it gets, if you take the right steps, talk to the right people, black dog days can and will pass. I wouldn't say that I'm grateful for the black dog, but he's been an incredible teacher. He forced me to reevaluate and simplify my life. I learnt that rather than running away from my problems, it's better to embrace them. The black dog may always be part of my life, but he'll never be the beast that he was. We have an understanding. I've learned through knowledge, patience, discipline and humour, the worst black dog can be made to heal. If you're in difficulty, never be afraid to ask for help. There is absolutely no shame in doing so. The only shame is missing out on life.
everyone, thank you all for watching that. Just take a moment to reflect on the video, and in the chat, if you could share with us how the black dog video made you feel. And whilst you're doing that, I'm going to ask Angela to share with us how did the black dog video make you feel, Angela?
Well, there's a number of things that I noted from that, because I have seen it a few times. It's always good to sort of review these things and keep going over them when you're in a state of sort of stress arousal, as it were. And a few things were things like when you try and chase it off, you might try and well, the video mentioned medication and things like that. We can try and ignore it for a while, and we can try and distract ourselves from the black dog, but it does keep on coming back. Medication is something that some people find very difficult to actually buy into. Because a lot of people don't actually like going to the doctor. So the psychological side of help with these things can be really important. And we need to remember that medication can be useful for some people. It is very useful, though, to think about the other things that we can do for ourselves that will help. And something else that came to me today watching it was the idea of embracing the black dog, which doesn't feel very natural, actually. I think sometimes we have to sort of accept that we might be more of a negative thinker and might need to practice more of a growth mindset, but accept that we can do things that will help us out. And sometimes it's about knowing what those things are that can actually help us, and realize when we are stressed, when we are in a state of stress arousal, it's about noticing it and realizing it, and then making the choices over what's going to help for us at those times.
I think what's interesting is we've got a few comments coming through in the chat from people, how, you know, simple things can help, how you can relate to it and see some of your own anxiety in it, or the fact that you can use alcohol to drown your sorrows. But I think also one of the other good things about the video, which I really related to the first time I watched it, was how often we try and hide our pain by being the, you know, the outgoing, outspoken, loud person in the group, when in fact what we're trying to do is hide how we really feel, because we don't know how to react to it. So I think that's really quite fascinating. And the person who comments about anxiety, I think you'll find the next slide we're going to show with you quite interesting.
So there's a few things on here that may resonate with some people. And again, if you want to use the chat, if there's anything there that sort of really resonates for you, or if you've seen any of these responses in yourself or people that you know well, and if you feel like you can share that sort of thing with us, just to give a few examples, that would be really helpful. The point here is that all mental ill health starts with anxiety, stress, or depression, and then it can escalate into other things. And we wanted to use this image, which is from Pathway to Success, to demonstrate different ways in which anxiety can present itself. So for my own example, I would say that there was a time once when I was essentially running the country in the job that I was doing with myself and one other guy, because our whole team got restructured and about 5 people left. And I started to realize that I really wasn't feeling very well, and it took me a while to get to a doctor. And I had these stomach aches. I didn't have the headaches, but I had stomach aches. And I actually lost a chunk of weight at the time as well, because it did go on for a while. And then my doctor said, "Oh, it's stress. Do you want me to sign you off?" And my response at the time was, "Oh, is that what it is? Oh, okay." Once I had a label, I realised what was going on, and then I was able to manage the situation differently. So sometimes just not knowing what's going on can be part of the issue. And ongoing stress can present itself in a number of different ways. It's not just headaches. For me, it was stomach aches, and for other people, it might be other responses as well. But that stress response certainly builds up, and it affects your immunization, your immunity, your immunity, and can make you have more coughs and colds and all that sort of thing. But also stomach aches and things like that. And certainly a desire to control people and events is something that I use to try and manage that anxiety, but that can also get out of control sometimes.
So if we build on how anxiety can make us feel and we look at what stress is, so stress at our most basic level is our body's response to pressure from a situation or a life event. And what's interesting with stress is our body is stimulated to produce stress hormones that actually trigger a flight or fight response in us and then activates our immune system, depending on how we respond to it. So if you consider the impact of COVID and how many people around the world have reacted to it, some people have found it really stressful and other people have really embraced it. And we've had through the chat, somebody said, you're right, yeah, stress is good for you, but you're right, it's all about the levels and exactly how much time we're actually spending feeling stressed.
I'm sitting here nodding. Yeah, I absolutely agree. It's part of that physiological response, and we will probably know it better as the fight or flight response or the acute stress response, which is that physiological reaction that occurs in the presence of something that's either terrifying or it's a survival response. It's either mentally or physically. So it's that release of hormones, cortisol being one of them, that prepares your body to either stay and deal with the threat and stand up to it, or run away to safety, or freeze. So it's a number of different things. It represents the choices that our ancient ancestors had when faced with danger in their environment. And we just don't come across, saber-toothed tigers very much in downtown London these days. And so the response is still there, but it's not quite so evolutionarily appropriate these days, but we still have it. We can still either fight or fly. And in either case, the physiological and psychological response to stress prepares us to react to that danger. That's what it's there for.
Mm-hmm. So if we look at our physiological response, and just so that you all know, when you receive a copy of the slides, any of the hyperlinks we've used on any of the pages, when you receive a copy of the slide deck, those links are live, so it'll take you straight to those pages. So I'm going to ask you all to comment in the chat for me. What I'd like you to do is consider what kind of things happen to your body when you experience fight, flight, or freeze. And I'll have some examples come up whilst we're waiting to see what you say in the chat. So one of the ones is our heart. So I know that if I'm feeling uncertain, unsure, worried, yes, exactly, your heart jumps in your chest, or your heart starts beating really fast. Yeah, you breathe really quickly, you get a really tense stomach, you might start to shake. So, some really good responses, everyone. Then we've got our lungs. So our breathing rate increases, as you said, and our airways dilate. So more oxygen actually enters our blood. Now the ears is really interesting, because I know that I've had the experience where it sounds like you're going through a tunnel with your ears, but actually the physiological response is that your hearing and all your senses actually become more acute. So your pupils dilate to help you see better, and your peripheral vision is also highlighted. And your brain becomes more alert. Your blood starts to flow very quickly to your muscles to get you ready to fight or flight. Your legs and arms, the sugars and fats, are converted to energy. Our sweating increases. Charming. So our hands and feet can feel cold as our body moves the blood around to our brain. Our mouths can feel dry. So there's lots of different things that happen to us, and our responses are regulated by our sympathetic nervous system and by hormones, as Angela said, like cortisol or adrenaline, and all of which are released into our bloodstream. And it happens so quickly, we're not actually aware that it happens.
I'm going to pick up on one of the comments from one of our attendees that said you experience dread like there's no way out. I particularly resonate with that, and I can think of times when somebody's told me I've got something wrong, and it feels like the world has fallen out from under your feet. Your throat constricts, like you say, your hearing goes more acute. Your blood you can hear your bloodstream in your ears, and your heart, your muscles, your brain, everything goes, oh my God, what have I just done? And yeah, it's like time constricts to that particular moment, and you're not thinking of anything else. So it is very much about the fight or flight, but it's just so horrible when you're in that moment. So this image that we've got next comes from the Depression Project, and the primary goal is to help create understanding and explode the myths that people might have about depression. If you think back to the Black Dog video, that is talking very much about full-on sort of depression and the long-term development of this. And people think that what causes depression is weakness or laziness, or this phrase to suck it up, or another phrase that people have picked up on these days is to man up. They're not very helpful, and you can't just suck it up and absorb it, because that's part of the problem. And there's a number of things that actually cause depression, and just to remind you, you will have a copy of these slides sent to you. So there will be various things here that you can probably relate to, and you could understand it if you think about it from somebody else's perspective. It depends on how we've been brought up, the values and the expectations that have been put on us or that we've absorbed from others, and what we're actually trying to achieve in our lives as people. We're always measuring ourselves against these factors like body image or perfectionism or the expectation of looking after others. And we can't be perfect, but in some ways we are actually trying to fulfill these expectations of ourselves and others. And if we don't have the tools to be able to do that, then it can lead to depression. So this, I'm not very good at remembering quotes, but one of my favorites is it's from Hamlet, and it's something along the lines of, there is no thing that's good or bad, but that thinking makes it so. It's about our reactions to these events and to what people think of us, or what we want people to think of us. That is a huge thing about what causes depression. It's our reactions to these particular situations. What do you think, Nina?
I agree, and I think what's really powerful about the Black Dog video is it really demonstrates how it can present itself in so many different ways. And the fact that, you know, still today some people think it's as simple as weakness or laziness or an inability to suck it up is a real example of how more learning still has to be done out there, so that people can actually stop stigmatizing what it actually means. Yeah,
you can't just snap out of it. That's ridiculous.
No. Right, everyone. So this is a really simple yes or no from you all. Now we're going to take a slightly different approach to stress. So we're going to ask you a couple of questions, and all you have to do is say yes. If you have never done it before, you say no. So my first question to you all: how many of you have ever smoked? And Ange, while we're waiting to hear from them, have you ever smoked?
Now, does it count if
no justification? It's just a yes or no, Angela.
I tried once.
Okay, so that's a yes. Okay, thank you for responding, everyone. So we've got a mixed response in the chat. All right, next one for you all. Have you ever known that you should exercise and haven't, or exercised when you were ill, or exercised when you were injured, over-exercised, under-exercised, basically? Yeah. Okay, there's a few yeses in there. All right, my next one for you all. Ever drank too much tea, coffee, or alcohol? Yeah, we've got a few over-exercise, and I think everyone's a yes for the tea, coffee, and alcohol. Okay, what about ever eaten too much, eaten too little, or eaten unhealthily? Okay, so the next one's a bit of a controversial one. Ever gone out without your mask? Ever come home and not washed your hands immediately, or not used anti-bac when you were somewhere where you could use it?
Ooh, interesting.
All right, okay, thank you for doing that, everyone. So I've got another question for you all before I hand over to Angela. So when you hear the term self-harm, and again, when you hear the term self-harm, what does it make you think of?
Your voice bottomed out a second there, Nina, so that was about putting it in chat, wasn't it?
Yeah, so in the chat, just very quickly, when you hear the term self-harm, what does it make you think of? Yeah, so we're getting a few good responses in there. So I'm going to share something with you all, because a lot of people, when they think of self-harm, quite often people think of cutting because that's how it's portrayed in the media. But actually, the most common form of self-harm is drinking too much, or smoking, or doing drugs. So if you think of, earlier we were talking about in the video where dealing with emotional pain was being dealt with through alcohol, it's a very easy thing for many of us to do. So what we're going to look at is the kind of things that causes stress. So the example I gave you in this slide are just very simple things that we do regularly just to manage our stress. So if we're feeling really good about ourselves, we might want to celebrate, so we'll go out to eat, or we might order a takeaway. If we're feeling, and have a few drinks, and if we're feeling a little bit down, me, I love chocolate, whether it's good news or bad news, I'm always going to reach for the chocolate. So it's the kind of things that we look for when it comes to stress.
Can I just pick up on something that there's a couple of comments in the chat about people being out of control when they self-harm, and my understanding of that situation and that reaction is that people in that position are in such a place that self-harm is about the only feel that they think they can do to bring the situation back into control, because they have control over their own bodies. So things like anorexia and bulimia are part of that spectrum of self-harm, and it's difficult to get your mind around. That's my understanding of that form of control. So while it looks like somebody is out of control, in their own minds, they are controlling a situation. Just in there.
So we're going to ask you all, just in the chat, just give us some examples of the kind of things that you feel cause you stress, or you think causes stress for others. So Ange, what are the kind of things that might make you feel stressed?
Well, maybe a number of things. I have not taken myself off social media, but there have been times when I've just not been looking at social media or the news, particularly over the last year or so, just because it's just too much information, because people are misrepresenting what's going on sometimes. So I just felt it's better to not engage with that sort of thing. Of course, there's financial and relationships Also workload cause me stress. So it's, of course, it's a variety of things at various times. It just depends what's going on at the time. Yeah. So we've got a few examples there on the screen, and we've got examples there of social media. Family cause us stress, our relationships with them, and of course we've all spent a bit more time with our families at home in lockdown at the time, and with kids and homeschooling. That's been a bit of a stress for some people as well. Relationships with people, friends, as well as our closer family. Loneliness can be an issue for people, especially those people who are working from home in this hybrid sort of world these days. That can be a factor for some. Grief, elder care, financial stresses, pet care, and pet health. Sometimes, you know, we can be very close to our pets, and that can be a cause of stress too for people. The traveling and commuting into work, that can be quite stressful depending on your reaction to these things. Work itself is a stress. Workload often comes up and gets mentioned, sorry. And of course, right at the end there, we've got COVID. So although you could relate an awful lot of those elements specifically to COVID, it's the broader things as well.
Yeah, and we've got a pretty comprehensive list from everyone in the chat as well. The only one that you and I missed out, the only one you and I missed out, Angela, is we forgot to mention technology.
Yeah. The number of times I've blocked myself out of my own bank account, it's ridiculous.
Yeah, exactly. So thank you for sharing in the chat, everyone. So we're going to share a term with you, which was coined right at the beginning of the pandemic, actually, and it was called the Corona Coaster. So the definition was when your emotions are on a roller coaster due to all the news each day about the coronavirus. So I wake up and I'm in a good mood, and then I watch the news and I start crying, which I think has summed up how many people have felt on various occasions during the whole pandemic. So we're moving to the final part of our session next, where we're actually going to start looking at the stress jar. So what we've done is we've built time so that we don't have to rush through this section next. So I'm going to pass over to Andrew, who's going to give you a very brief analogy of how the stress jar can work.
Yeah, right. So think about times when you've had a bottle of fizzy pop, a sort of 1 litre bottle, and you've drunk half of it. And what happens if you shake it up or you drop it? It fizzes up inside the bottle, and then you open up the lid, and what happens? It
goes everywhere.
Fizzes open, goes everywhere, and once it's done, it's out there. So we could relate that to stress in that a lot of the time we have a little bit of space. We've drunk half the bottle. We've got a bit of space for that stress to expand, but at some point, sometimes it's got to overflow. If somebody triggers us or undoes the bottle lid, then it's going to overflow at some point. So perhaps the trick is to drink a bit more of the fizz, build in a bit more leeway for that stress to expand appropriately, but for us to contain it. So that's one way we can look at stress.
Thanks, Angela. So one of the simplest ways of looking at the stress jar, so we've got 2 examples here. We have our work stresses and we have our personal stresses. So you can either have one jar that has everything in it. So as your jar becomes full and you're not opening the lid to help yourself to something from it, your stress starts to build, which means that your emotional resilience starts to wane. So the idea behind the stress jar is that you regularly dip into it and see what's happening so that you can manage your stress, almost like a tap. You turn the tap on, you release the pressure, you turn the tap off, and you contain everything. So the idea behind the stress jar that we've created is, what can I do to manage my stress? So if you're feeling vulnerable, your jar will fill up quickly. If you're feeling resilient, your jar will remain quite empty. So what we're going to do now is we're going to give you the opportunity in the chat to work through the stress jar. So we've got a number of questions that will help you find a solution. Please only share if you're prepared to share. But what we'd ask you to do is, if there's a particular problem or issue that you have right now and you can't find a solution to it, drop it in the chat. You can just send it just to me, or you can send it just to the hosts and panelists that we can have a look. And we will use the questions that are going to appear on the screen to help you find an answer to something that might be troubling you right now. So if anyone wants to do that, that's fine. And if not, then Angela and I will work through this together to give you an example of how it will work. And just so that you all know, we'll send you a copy of the handout for the stress jar after we finish this afternoon, so that you can have a look at how that works. Okay, so somebody's come through on the chat where they've talked about their son returning to school on Mondays and how it's a meltdown day. So thank you for sharing that. So I'm going to ask you, what can you change or manage differently based on this situation? So if your son returning to school on Monday, and it always being a meltdown, is there anything that you can change or manage differently? Yeah, more prep on a Sunday. Okay, that's really good. So is there anything that you're doing that needs your urgent attention? Yeah, stop getting so stressed with him, which is very easy to say, but can actually be quite difficult to do. So let's broaden the scope. Is there anyone around who can help you? Yeah, the head teacher, the school, your husband. Yeah, okay, good. Now, let's think of where we asked you earlier about the unhealthy coping strategies we had. What are some of the unhelpful ways that you might be trying to cope with the situation? Goes to bed too early, so that might be you're trying to avoid it, so you're going to bed early, so you don't have to have that conversation. Okay, don't have breakfast. Breakfast is the most important meal of the day, and you're rushing. Okay, really good. Thank you for sharing that. So what are some of the useful ways that you could use to try and cope instead? Yeah, talk to your partner, talk to your son. I love that. Thank you. Encourage positive conversation. Talk more about what's actually happening and how it makes you feel. Brilliant. And this is the real, the real tough question. What can't you change and need to accept? Yeah, exactly. Mondays. I knew you were going to say that. Yeah, we can't change the fact that Mondays are still going to come around. And yes, you're right. He does still have to go. So is there anything else that you could do? You're not sure. Okay, so I'm going to open this up to everyone, if that's okay. Any suggestions for what they could do to help their son not have those meltdowns on a Monday, so that they then end up as a parent feeling stressed about what's going on? So any suggestions from the rest of you on what might be able to help? Angela, what do you think?
I'm thinking about a situation where a friend of mine had something very similar, and they had to have the conversation with the school to understand what was going on in the school environment, because their son was feeling a bit isolated. There was a bit of a disruptive home situation going on at the time, which might have been causing his reluctance to go to school. So she engaged with the school to try and get try and make sure that he had a bit more support in school, so friends that he could talk to and relate to at the time. I believe he's settled now, but creating school as a safe space for him is what they were aiming for.
Yeah. We've got some lovely suggestions in the chat. So we've got offset it with something to look forward to on a Monday. Get up a bit earlier so that you're more relaxed in your morning routine. A reward chart for each day that your son copes well and gets out to school on time, or coach him into positives to encourage him to look forward to going to school, such as a favourite teacher or subjects and friends, and also how to be able to share his feelings. So thank you for that, everyone. So this was a really, really simple way and a quick way of looking at how the stress jar can work and how to work through the questions. But as a tip for all of you, by taking something out of the jar and looking at what's causing you stress, you can take your time with those questions to work through. It's almost like a problem solving tool. This is what's causing me stress right now. What can I do about it? And I think question 6 is actually a really powerful question. Yeah. Because what's really important for all of us is to recognize that sometimes the things that cause us stress are the things that we can't actually control. And I know when it comes to anxiety, and I do have OCD, and my OCD stems from the need to control things. So it's learning to accept that some of the things that might be causing you stress might actually mean that you can't change the situation that's happening. And therefore, having to accept it is where we need to get to so that we learn to be less stressed. Well, on the whole, I think the questions are really good. They're really helpful, and they can help you sort through a solution. And as a tool, you can use this with your teams. You can use this with your family, although I would be careful if you do this with your family, you know them too well. So it's very difficult to be unbiased when you answer those questions with them. But it's a good one to do with your teams.
It's a coaching approach, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
It's the fact that it's an objective questionnaire, and we're not very good at coaching ourselves sometimes. So having questions like this and really reflecting on them as if somebody else was asking them, I think can really help us face up to the questions that we're not really asking ourselves sometimes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. So we are almost at an end, everyone. So we're just going to give you some tools and tips to help you moving forward. So we all know exercise is really good for us. It releases cortisol and oxytocin, which is like the happy hormone. So exercise is good for us. It's good for our heart and it's good for our well-being. There's nothing wrong with eating junk food as long as it's not your every meal. So eating healthily or eating junk food in moderation. We're not going to tell you to not drink alcohol. It's the same rule as it is with the unhealthy food. In moderation, don't use it as a crutch to help yourself. Limit your screen time. To get a good night's sleep, this might shock you, but to get a good night's sleep, you actually need to turn your screens off at least 2 hours before bed. And a really good practice is to not have a TV in your bedroom as well, or your laptop. And visit your stress jar. Every 6 weeks is a really good time to visit it, to top yourself up, as in top up what's happening with your stress and keeping an eye on it so that you can maintain good practice and healthy feelings.
Yeah, so as a wrap up, we don't know what other people's stresses are, and some of us are very good at hiding it. So sometimes we need to have these conversations more specifically with people just to check in how they actually are. And it's a very sort of, I guess, quite a British response in some ways when you ask somebody, how are you doing today? And people just say, yeah, I'm fine. And we just leave it at that. And I know that between us, within our team, we've developed more of a reaction of when somebody says, yeah, fine, we're more likely to say, what does that mean? Are you really fine? What's going on? So being able to have more of those conversations to really understand what's going on and understand how somebody feels at that time can be really useful.
And if you were on the Developing Resilience webinar last month, you might remember that Steve and I shared the acronym for FINE. So, you know, I love this quote because I think it's so relevant to, you know, as Angela alluded to, what we quite often say when someone says, "How are you?" I hide all my scars with an "I'm fine." So how many of you can remember what the acronym for FINE was? And it's absolutely okay if you can't remember or you don't know. But I'll just let you know. So this is a good test for you all as well. The next time somebody responds with "I'm fine," challenge it gently and say, when you say you're fine, what do you really mean? Because the acronym for FINE is feeling insecure, nervous, and emotional. And our final tools and tips for you, everyone. So what we have here is a number of different websites that you can go to help. We've got your organisational employee assistance programme, the NHS Mood self-assessment, which is really good, all the mental health pages, the Every Mind Matters, the 10 Steps for Happier Living, or the Wellness Action Plan. Matt Haig, who's an author, and Andy Burrows, who's from Razorlight, they wrote an album about their mental health issues, so I've included the link there for you all. There's the very aptly named app, the Construction Industry Helpline, which is for construction workers. There's Anxiety UK, Calm, the campaign against living miserably, No Panic, Bereavement Care, Family Lives, and we've also included the link here to the Black Dog video in case you've not seen it before or you'd like to share it with others, because we wanted to make sure that you had access to that. So I don't want to shock you, we're going to give you the heads up. Angela and I are about to come back on camera.
There we go. So don't forget, everybody, in these uncertain times as things carry on, and we get back to something maybe approaching a bit more normal, although that looks very different these days, that can be quite stressful in itself, both for ourselves as employees and the business, as everybody's trying to get used to working in more of a hybrid kind of way. So we hope that this webinar today has provided you with some useful tools and tips to help you keep calm and carry on.
Thanks, Angela. And for additional information, if any of you are interested, those are our email addresses. Feel free to reach out to us. And if you are interested in becoming a mental health first aider, we are running an open programme which commences on the 26th of November. And we do have a few places available. If your company is too small so that you can't do a whole cohort, come along and attend this. It's really not very expensive and it's such a good life skill to have. So thank you all for joining us this afternoon. Stay safe. And just before you go, if you wouldn't mind just dropping in a word or a phrase to share with us about what you thought of the webinar. But thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.